Crystal here. Welcome to another video with the Interactive Immersive HQ. And this video, we are going to do a Q&A for immersive media freelancers. And we also have a special guest, Brandon person, so we can have different perspective on some of these questions. These questions were presented on Instagram and also in the HQ Pro Facebook page. And we'll first go over our background, just so you know where we're coming from, because we have our different paths and different way we got started. So I balance between doing freelance work, teaching, and also personal artwork. And I work in a lot with brand activations to long-term installations and attractivity to live shows. Past clients include like DoorDash, Meta Oculus, NASA, Cadillac, Formula One, HBO, Otherworld. Yeah, so your turn.
So I'm Brandon Epperson. These days I mostly do a lot of television, sometimes just straight up big LED wall type situation, large pixel count, lots of outputs. Also do a lot of commercials, fashion shows, car commercials, car launches. Mostly do live events. I guess the television shows, actually, man, I've done like 4 or 5 game shows now, which is the last couple of years. This kind of game show thing has been a thing. And that's to tape, that's for edit. And I guess some commercials are to edit, but I do mainly large scale. So it's about 80% of my work is like anywhere from stadium scale to, television show.
What are some past clients?
Tiffany, Honda, Acura, Bottega, Bentley, Ferrari, ABC News a lot lately, Fox Interactive I've done 3 game shows for now, or Fox Alternative. Lots of fashion.
We've got a lot of questions, so we'll try not to be on a question too long, but a lot of these questions we have similar answers for a lot of these questions. So I broke it down in 4 categories on how to get started, money, the creative process, and also on location, some location-based questions. And we'll kind of go in that order. Yeah, so getting started, we had just a lot of questions on how do we get started. And I guess the best I can kind of talk about a little briefly of how I got started. Did you get started? And
Well, I feel like these questions, like you have, how do you get started? How do you get a career? How do you get new clients? And how do you go about getting gigs? I feel like these are all one question. It's kind of like you describe the path.
Yeah, and it's really, because your path, my path, I know a lot of different people's paths is very different. And there was also a question how do you get your first job if you didn't study this for school? And I think a lot of people don't study this. And that's kind of, at least in TouchDesigner worlds, why I find it's very great is that there's so many people from different paths. People come from music or come from engineering. I came from animation and architecture, and then they all kind of think differently and specialize differently, but it's somehow got into, or there's a lot of people who were into VJing and then got into doing more commercial work afterwards. How did I get started? My background was in animation. In grad school, I was very lucky that I did have a mentor that was really into projection mapping. He didn't know how to use TouchDesigner, but he introduced me about what TouchDesigner is, and then he got Jarrett Smith, who from Derivative, to do a TouchDesigner workshop for 2 weekends in my university in grad school, and that's how I got into TouchDesigner. And then I did I would always do internships, and after graduating, I did an internship with VT Pro, and I did a mentorship with Elbers for an Interactive Immersive HQ Pro, and that was also during COVID, so I just kind of had a lot of time of just getting my chops better in TouchDesigner and freelancing.
Software-wise, what were you in before you went to TouchDesigner? And as far as live video software?
Yeah, well, I in college, I did like processing and did Maximum P, and then was C4D, did some Houdini, a lot of Adobe After Effects and like Photoshop, and I was like more of an illustrator. And I like studied animation, but I was like never really into 3D animation because I just say I'm like a lazy animator where I don't have patience for rendering and keyframing and stuff. So like I really liked doing real-time animation, and like that kind of, I grasped to that more. Kind of get started like having the mentorship with Albers. He kind of like, he got me more comfortable with asking for money. I was used to be like more like an artist mind. I think I would ever like get into commercial work. I thought I was gonna just do like art residencies and try to get grants and like move somewhere else that has better funding for arts in the US. And then afterwards, like oh, I enjoyed doing this. And also I think having COVID made it more easy for me to also work remotely, because I know that I personally don't like working in an office agency space, and that flexibility made it easier. And I think like having Albers kind of also gave me like a safety net. Like I would get offered jobs, and then I don't know if I could do it, and then others just say yes, and like we'll figure it out. And I think if I didn't have safety net, I would be like, I don't know how to do this, no, and stuff. And then
that's huge for everyone. Then.
Yeah, and then like in the beginning it was really hard, not hard, but like I had definitely like an imposter syndrome, especially in the beginning. A lot of gigs were like hand down by someone. It's like, oh, I don't have time, like can you do this, or like recommended, and I don't want to disappoint whoever is recommending me, or like, oh, like these people or mentors or like friends believe I can do this, so like I should step up to do it.
I mean, that's, I think, one of the most critical things about all of these questions about like, how do you get a career, or like, why do you get hired, or how do you get clients? I mean, just caring is like honestly part of it. For me, I got started out of more exploration. Well, no, TouchDesigner, I mean, the thing is like, I was doing a lot of Maxim SP, Quartz Composer, and that was kind of my jam for a while because of a lot of things that it allowed me to do, and that was kind of the state of the art at the time. But TouchDesigner for me was because it outperformed other things. Like there was just a point where I switched to.
It doesn't have to be just TouchDesigner, just like immersive media.
Well, I mean, in that sense, like that was purely exploration. I went from being a music, like a symphony player, ballet dancer, to at one point wanting to control lights with my trombone. I got like really into just the whole synesthetic idea of art, like the whole movement from like the 70s to early 2000s in New York of people trying to translate motion to light, or light to sound, and sound to light, and you know how to put sensors all over dancers, and that's actually what got me interested in it, was just a continuation of actually just performance art, you know, and that's what actually started me into this career path. And then ultimately the same thing as you're saying, you know, I'm just going to say, yeah, I can do that because I know hypothetically it's possible, and I'm just going to like dive in and stay up all night.
Yeah. If you don't have opportunities, trying to like make opportunities for yourself. But like one kind of exercise Albers made me do early on was like just message, email, like cold email, like maybe like a museum that I think is cool, and like tell them like, oh, babe, this is my skill set. I think like this can bring more people to your space if like have this idea, or try and like make kind of like collaborations. If that's like also you don't know if your community has anything, like try to make something happen. Well, how do you get new clients?
Man, for me, it's like 95% of it is word of mouth. Yeah.
That's the thing, is like, I these questions are really hard because like I feel like all my jobs were recommended by someone, or like someone that's in a job that like also get me into it. So I guess it's also, I mentioned before in kind of like freelancing talks that it's really important to like, I don't like to say the word network, but just like have a tribe and like build that up. Or I remember I did like a panel on freelancing, and I said like you can like message people like on just because like you want to like get to know like how they get started or like learn more about the work. Don't like message one like, hey, can I get a job? Or like, hey, like
people hate that.
Yeah, like don't do that. And the thing is like after I gave that advice, someone messaged me afterwards like, hey, I heard your talk. Can you like help me with a job and stuff? And I was like, this is exactly what I told you not to do.
Especially, well, I mean, this isn't as much getting started, but I think it affects everything. Is like, are you fun to hang around? And it's something that I think a lot of artists struggle with, is that there's a lot of really good programmers are out there that have zero social skills, and they're like very difficult to just like hang around with, or they feel awkward and all these things. And it's going to hamper your career.
Yeah, because like when you ask like recommend someone for a job, and then you would ask like how are they with clients?
Oh, it's my first question. Yeah, like can I trust this person to have a conversation with my client and not put my client off or make them feel weird? Agencies and like I've always like told people that the fountain of money floweth from advertising, and kind of across the board. In our society, it kind of comes down from that, but you can't just necessarily go straight to an agency. So I think one really important thing we haven't said yet is like you have to make shit. You can't just have a bunch of hypotheticals or say, I have these skills, I can do TouchDesigner. Like you need to make shit. Like you need to put shit on Vimeo, like without a job. Like sit in your house, make really cool looking stuff. Find some friends, a dancer. For me, like the job I did with Mela, it was crazy. Like me and Mela got together, took some lasers into a dark space at House of Yes. My friend Thomas owned a camera. He came and shot it for free. We just made this video and put it up on Vimeo. And then I had like 20 jobs that like came out of just people seeing that and saying, hey, I want that for this commercial. Can you do that thing? So, it's funny as it is to quote Mark Zuckerberg, but like, content is king. Like you just make shit, in your time. Try to solve little problems for yourself, like at night, in between your other jobs that you have to pay rent.
Money. Is salary different among freelance gigs? Yeah.
Especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
But, do you like the person? So you're always going to like pay other people to make your art, and then you're going to get paid to help them make their art. I gauge my price based on how much I want to do the job.
Well, it's also like who is the client? Like if it's like, I don't know, Mercedes versus like a band, they don't have the same budget. But it's like maybe you want to do the work for the band because you get more creative and stuff, and that's like something I have to put in count. And also like if the job is short-term or long-term, if it's like something that's gonna be something consistent for a year versus like 1 week that's like super strong grind, that 1 week usually.
Yeah, the tricky thing that you get into sometimes is like setting precedent. You want to have good conversations. Like if you give a first-time client, because you think you're going to have a bunch of jobs, that like a lot of clients are going to promise you, oh, I'm going to have 10 other jobs after this that are just like this. A lot of times that stuff doesn't come true. And I'm not necessarily saying like you need to just get your money up front and run, but you do. Even what I like to do is for a first-time client or someone who I'm cutting them a deal, you still invoice for your full rate. And then at the end of the invoice, you put client discount and you bring it down, but you need to show them this is what this should normally cost, but I'm giving you a break. And there's a lot of ways that actually does some good because they feel like they're getting a break and all that kind of stuff. And also when it comes time for the next job, you're like, hey, so,
you got this break.
Yeah, we need to get it back closer if you have the budget for it. Now, again, there are certain artists that could call me and I'll work for free, like just because I want to do that thing. So, it's a bit depending on your life and your situation.
Yeah, and sometimes you like they say they want to collaborate, and I would ask like, do you really want to collaborate, or do they want you just cooperate? They just want you to use the skills for to make their thing happen.
Yeah.
So next question. In your opinion, what percentage of career stability in a field relies on luck and who you know?
Well, I feel like a super lucky person. So, I mean, I do think luck.
Both. Yeah, luck definitely has like a big too, and like who you know, I feel like
Well, I think you need to put yourself in the situation, you know, like don't just sit in your house all the time. Like you do need to go out to like programming meetups or go to shows, you know. It's like go see art and talk to the artists, and that is very important. You can't make a career as easily if you're just staying in your house.
And like it's good to like, I would say like try genuinely make connections with people and not just like, try like this person might give me a job and like be all icky and stuff. Like don't be like a car salesman about it and stuff, and like, oh, like this is what I did, because people can feel that vibe, and it's just icky and stuff.
Not to mention in certain cultures that's like an immediate, like they won't ever call you if you try to sell yourself like that. Yeah,
because also if I want to have a subcontractor like also get someone to help me on a job, it's also like people like, is this person is a friend who I'm like, oh, we're gonna hang out and work on this job together and stuff. Even like I have like gigs like, oh, I actually find this client's kind of a little bit annoying, but then like at least I'm doing it with a friend and stuff, and then we can like have a story, and which is like at the end of the day like
that's most of our careers.
Yeah, just like hanging out.
I mean, a lot of the crazy memories that, you know, Elbers or Matthew and Ian and all of us have are these great bloodbaths where we're there together, but with some nightmare client. So that's pretty common.
Next question. How do you get started was one part, and then what do you do with healthcare if you are solo? So if you are in the US, then you just need to pay for your own healthcare. Yeah, you have to pay your own healthcare.
Maybe pick up a part-time teaching job.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. Get a teaching job so you can get healthcare through that. But that is like a big con about freelancing and stuff. Because also like if you pay off pocket healthcare, it's like hard to get like as much benefit from like
unless you're just paying like more than your rent, you know. And
yeah.
Freelancers Union, you know, was active for a while. I'm not sure if they still have packages. But yeah, that's tough. Now, we don't have like a video artist union, but if you get into like a projectionist union or something like that, you're going to get healthcare. But man, there's a lot of things you get entangled in there where you can only work certain places, and you know you have to earn a certain amount. So that's a hard question to have any good answer for if you live in the US. It's terrible.
Yeah. But also another like pro of freelancing is you can raise your rate whenever you want if the client's okay. Like it's not like the same client and stuff that's like okay with it. Like there's nothing to make your rate have to stay the same.
Yeah. Whatever the market will bear. I mean, and I certainly, I guess I'll say I have observed a lot of young artists get paid not what they're worth by taking on a job at some business where they're doing that full time, and they just get a salary and they're making a lot less than they would make. Now, yes, they're getting some benefits and some health insurance. I mean, it's a trade-off there for what you want. I mean, I think that's a personality thing about all of us, what we want to do.
Yeah. It's definitely not for everyone, which we'll get more onto in the process section, but like flexibility, but like not stability. Yeah.
You have to be comfortable with not knowing. Like right now, I don't know what I'm doing in November, you know, like, but I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, but we're like in Greece in the middle of October, and then we get to do that.
Yeah, so it's a trade-off.
How much do you earn, and where do you take orders? I'm not really sure where do you take orders.
I think that means just incoming jobs, I guess, or like requests.
Okay, so I was a little bit like about talking about like rates, just because it's also different from like the US or like from New York versus like other places, because things that the keep accounts like US oftentimes like rates are higher because we don't have healthcare, and like we live in New York, so then like our rent is higher, so the rate could like I raise or I'm more comfortable asking for a higher rate than like when I was in LA when my rent was lower. But I think like
well, I think you should just ask around. I'll say this, even without talking about us. You know, if I hire someone to replace myself, I'm paying at least $1,200 a day, you know, for a 10-hour day. And there are high level people, those top 5 people in the community out there that are asking $2,000 a day,
I really I would say for me, I'm like usually depending on the job, $750 to $1,200. And I feel like for a TouchDesigner developer, say the lowest should be like 500, maybe 400 if you're like have no like really beginning experience.
Yeah, if you're just starting out, I would say the only time you should be that low. But when you just compare to game developers, Unreal, Unity, all that other stuff out there, the low end I find is about probably $650 or so. And even if I get an Unreal developer for $650, I feel like, oh man, like I made out like a bandit. I feel like most people these days are charging somewhere $800 to $1,000 a day.
And also like keep in mind, maybe like, I don't know, someone here like, oh, $1,200 a day. You don't work every day of the month.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So like also we're not.
I guess I'm just talking about like a 10-hour rate or
Yeah.
Now, one thing I do like to do, and I'll say this, clients love flat rates. And you want to be careful with that. But if you have a job that's like a real bear and it's going to like take kind of all your mental capacity for like a few weeks, set a really nice weekly rate and then tell your client, I will never charge you overtime. Like this is like, you can basically abuse me, be up to a certain point. Clients like that because they don't like surprises on the back. Like a client does not like to have a certain quote and then get hit for double at the end. Elders doing that to me 20 years, whatever, 15 years ago. But it's much better to just like have a higher rate, but then not have to charge any overtime or do anything on the back end. Clients definitely prefer the no surprises thing. So it's better to be a little high and then not have to hit them with overtime. Or not, and also you don't want to feel like you're getting abused because then you don't do as good of work. You start to get all crabby and anxious and whatever. So set a rate that you're happy with, that you're going to be stoked to do the show. And that's what I tell people when I'm hiring, when they're like, oh, my rate is usually from this to this. And I'm like, I just pay the max because I'm like, I want you to do your best. I want you to try really hard and I want you to do your best. So I try to pay people. At their beginners, maybe 600. Experienced people should be charging at least $1,000 a day if you're like a badass,
Yes. Then we now go on.
It says, where do you take orders? I think that's an important part of this. I take a lot of just inbound phone calls. I mean, I think in our industry, you're going to get a lot of calls of just, is this possible? Or, hey, we have this thing. Do you think you can pull this off? And you're basically just going to get, it's a request for proposal if it's super official, or it's just a phone call. And you need to be fast at just like making quotes and understanding like how much time you think it's going to take you, and then definitely either do 1.5 times that, because you kind of always underestimate like how hard something's going to be.
And also I want to bring up like a bunch of people kind of ask like, oh, can you do this? Blah. And I feel don't be disappointed that maybe like a fraction of the people actually like reaching out materialize.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I feel like, sometimes like, oh, I might have this, and I try not to get precious or actually believe it's going to happen until something is on paper or like
until the deposit hits the account.
Because I'm like, I don't know, it's you just get really disappointed if you believe every project that comes up. It's like, oh, I'm gonna have this like 2-year thing to make this installation. I'm like, oh, is it poof? Yeah. So don't get attached.
It's good to do the initial, especially when a big job comes in. If it's like mega, and I always do like a little bit of a temperature check of like, if I say a number that's this big, like, is this going to freak you out? Because like it's sounding like something kind of in this area, and then make sure the temperature check is okay. And then now, okay, I'll go spend 2 days making like a proper proposal and spending all this time on it. Because it's very common that you'll spend a day and a half making a really fancy deck and this whole budget and all this stuff. You give it to them, they're like, I need this to cost 25% of this. And you're like, well, that's not possible. And you just wasted all that time. Yeah, you just wasted a day and a half.
Cool. Let's go on the process. The process first, there's a lot of questions on the process, which is great. my first question is, what are the basics you need to know, like good foundations?
I mean, work for hire, understand what you're selling, I would say. I'm actually really bad at paperwork, and something I would say to everyone is like, be really good with your documentation. Try to be just very organized with like what you're spending. Be very clear with, is this work for hire? Am I going to be able to advertise that I did this job afterwards? Some people don't even want you to like post it on your website. They want to pretend like they did it. You know, stuff like that. And you, the worst part is when you're halfway in a project and then you find something out, or something was vague and not clear. So I would say foundation wise, it's like, just know how to set up your business, know what your taxes are going to be, because that can burn you. Like you can end up undercharging because you get hit with a bunch of tax money that you didn't really expect. You need to charge enough to deal with that. And then also good work for hire agreements, service agreements, I find are really important, because we've all been stiffed a couple of times. I mean, I've been stiffed for 30 grand, you know, and like, if you don't have good paperwork, like you can't do anything about it, you know, so.
I would say save money, that jobs aren't consistent, and that maybe like you had a really good year, but you don't know, you could have a pandemic, you could have strikes that like, that you can't really predict how things will be. And also being organized, because that's something I think for creative people tend to not be good at, but if you're freelancing, it should be important.
Well, and I think too, the busier you get, the harder it gets to stay organized. And that's what plagues me, is like, I'm always like, oh, I'll get done with this job and I'll go back and clean up all the paperwork. And like, then it's like really brutal trying to remember everything. And like, then it's just like a big pile. So also, organization is really big. Like
whatever project, kind of figure out if they're responsible or how you can get like good documentation. So like you can also get more jobs from that job.
Yeah, BTS definitely gets you more jobs.
Yeah. Next question, where to start, useful platforms for connecting people, and tips you wish you had known before. We're going to talk about how we get started. Useful platform. Nowadays, there's all these different online meetups.
Still Instagram.
But Instagram, yeah. But also like kind of check out where like if you have like a live meetup. I try to host live meetups. I did one in LA, Montreal. I really want to do one in New York, and like Albert did in like Tokyo recently. And like I love those kind of like meeting people and like getting out all of nerdy.
Because most of us like come from a place where someone else hired us to be an assistant at first, like when you're starting out, or to like, you know, someone needs help on something, or they can't do a job and like they need someone to do it. And when those moments happen, you're just like, okay, who do I know? Oh, I met these people like at this thing that can do this.
And then they also, good, like we meet, sometimes just once in a while, like email, like, hey, like, just wondering if you like need anything, blah, 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 and stuff. Like, cause sometimes like, I remember once that I just happened to have like this one person who routinely once a season would message like, hey, like, just like, this is what I've been working on lately. If you like have anything, let me know, blah, blah, blah. And then like the day after someone like said, can you do this job? And I'm like, I can't do it. Like, who can I like refer to? It's like, oh, that person and stuff. And it's like, cause he was just on my pen, like, oh, he's available. I don't have to ask someone like, hey, are you in the middle of a job or something? And I just connect them and stuff. So
yeah, and that's all the time. I mean, just with this last game show, you know, it was the exact same thing. It was like, oh, we need something like right now, someone to start tomorrow. And like whoever's fresh in your head that, you know.
It's like whoever comes to mind, it's like, oh, I talked to blah, blah. They said they're like going to finish this thing right next week and it'll work out.
But yeah, as far as putting content out, I mean, LinkedIn, I find, as far as all the more professional ones, I do get hit up on LinkedIn about jobs. But I feel like even more is like, what is my visual footprint on Instagram? And even on LinkedIn, like people then go to your Instagram, and if they see something that's pretty or they see what they like, then I mean, it's kind of what they respond
like
to.
Doing tutorials definitely help put me more like known in a TouchDesigner knowledge section. Yeah. I'm not like the best at Instagram, to be honest. I'm
sure that answer is different for different people.
Different people. I definitely know people who like post a lot on Instagram and like they just get jobs from that and stuff.
Yeah.
And then just kind of, I guess also like you should do it, but also figure out like what works for you. Like whenever I have anything, I'll like post it on LinkedIn, but I'll just like close it because I'm just not very good at like self-control with social media, and I just try to like not get too deep into it. So
I think if you're the type of artist that makes like very like visceral visual stuff that's very visually stimulating, then it's something like Instagram where you can make an impact with that. If you're more of like a coder, developer, or somebody that's gonna like solve some API issue for someone, then maybe Instagram is not the best thing to do. You know?
Yeah. Next question.
Sure.
How do you approach the creative process on an immersive space? What are the key steps? Well, it really depends. Like, is it a client job? Like, I guess with freelance, it's a client job.
I mean, for me, there's always step one, and that's the room. Like, I start every single design from where is it, and what is the shape of the room? What are the conditions of the room? Does the room have like limitations?
And then also for a room, if so like the client, I'm not present in the wherever they are, and the client doesn't have measurements of the room, I ask like, can you do you have an iPhone? Can you do a LiDAR scan of the room and just like export FBX and send it to me, and then I can make a 3D model and know the exact measurement of the space.
That honestly, the thing of working in your space is one of those, from the previous question, is like, what's a tip that you wish, well, not necessarily that like, I wish I would have known before or earlier, but it's just like something that was at a certain point I realized, like, start from there, give yourself the frame that you're painting inside of. And also don't be afraid to make things easy. This actually came from my music professor in school one time that said, like, don't try to play the hardest piece ever. Try to play the thing that you sound the best on. And I apply that to my other artwork too. Is it's like I walk into a room, like I'm not here to just try to set some new standard in TouchDesigner programming. I'm actually here to make something awesome, which can be very easy.
And also I sometimes feel like things that are simple but done well reads better.
Yeah. Definitely. It's more clear. I don't see a direct relationship from what I'm doing to what's happening. If it goes through too many translations or too many steps of modification, then you lose the clarity of it.
Like, so. I still like to, like, on a paper, just kind of make a flow of like, how is the input of like the person, if there's an activity, and how is that translated into TouchDesigner or to sensors, and like what is output and stuff. And like,
do you have a limit of steps? Because I know Ian Shilensky, he says more than 3 steps, don't do it. So I'm just looking at these questions a little bit. So the next question is kind of related. How do you plan the interactions in your show? And do you keep an eye on the locations, or is it all pre-production and whatever? And I think this is all related. I mean, creative process and how you choose the interactions. I guess I'll use an example of like music, because I feel like it's a good example. You have like a stadium tour, or like any kind of music performance, even if it's like a small show. There are certain, you only want to have a certain number of things that are interactive, and then the rest of it you want to be very stable, like for the musician, right? Like if I'm playing a piece of music, I can't play more than a certain number of instruments at a time, and nor you can't put all your expression into that. So it's like you want to set up the beats and the background harmony and all these things to be consistent, so that then that one or two instruments that you want to be very expressive with are real time and interactive. And I think that's the same even for an art installation or something. Like, you don't necessarily want everything to be real time. Like, you want to have a frame to put this in so that people can understand what they're doing. You know, maybe they pick a few backgrounds and then they do something interactive. But I think a lot of young artists get into just making too much of it interactive, not enough of a frame. And then the space itself, I think, makes the frame a lot of the time. You walk into a room that's got a big archway and something else, it's like, we'll jump onto that, and try to use the room, like try to use the shape of the space.
Next question, in a large scale installation, immersive show, do you program everything on your laptop or a media server?
Well, I mean, coming from me, I build media servers. That's like a big part of my business. So I have media servers at home. That's super lucky and a benefit. Like, if you build your own computers, I don't know. I've went back and forth on like leaving a machine at home or always being able to take my machine into the field.
Well, Ober, he always said like one of the best skill what he does for like clients is can be able to optimize his network. And the thing was, he just does everything in his laptop, and that's so you can like program in your laptop, but probably on once like a big large scale show.
Well, I think it just comes down to outputs, really. I mean, yeah, like laptops now are fast. Like, this 40 series laptops are crazy, and so I do believe in that for sure. And I know, I just came off a show where I couldn't run the show on a laptop. And it was actually very frustrating when you're trying to make post archive things, or you're trying to work on the show in your hotel room and you can't. So that is very frustrating. I mean, I think it is really good to either have your show modular, so you can work on just like certain bases and certain components on your laptop at least. But I think when, obviously you can't do 16 outputs on your laptop. So like,
and also like, I quite appreciate is if you have like a media server somewhere and you can just remote onto it and have like good internet, or you don't have to be great internet, but like just like parsec in and just work that way.
I mean, I think that's kind of the best of both worlds of not having a bunch of racks at your house.
Yeah, and that's what also like during the pandemic, a lot of studios and agencies did, like people just work from home, and if they need to like render something, they just remote into the studio's machines and stuff. So how do you deal with projects where the intellectual property is not defined?
You define it.
you can talk more on this.
I mean, it's just like you don't want to be halfway into a project and then realize that like something you thought you were going to own, you don't own. Like, that's just something you need to definitely talk about up front. And honestly, most, like if you work for any kind of TV show or usually ad agencies as well, I mean, they're going to assume it's all work for hire. So I think if it's not defined, you need to assume that it's work for hire and you do not own it after it goes away, because that's what your client's going to assume.
How do you manage time when you have multiple projects at once, but in different process stage? I'm doing this for a long time, and was part of me is a lot stressed about it. I guess it's not really a good way of doing it. You just try to
just organization.
Just try, yeah, organization. Try because also like when I did that, they're also like in different time zones, so it's like meetings would be different. That's like helpful in a way, and also like if they also know they're not the only client, and they kind of have to like respect that too. Like it's like, oh, can we have a meeting at this? And like, no, I'm sorry, I'm gonna be on site for this job, and like because you can't pay me full time. If you communicate that, there should kind of respect that.
Yeah, just manage expectations really well about when you're available, and also just track your time. I mean, I don't do that as much as you do, but you're also a lot better than me at tracking how many hours you've done for each project.
Yeah, because I tend to work more remotely and you're more live and stuff. So also like for me, like I have day rate, but I tend to end up being more hourly. Day rate divided. I like to tell people I go by 8 hours rather than 10 hours. So divide by 8, and then but they like want to know how many hours I have, so that I pretty detailed on like tracking the hours and stuff. Toggl Track is like an app that I quite like, that you can like put different projects and then you can like just play, and I would usually put like what task it is, and also it's good for me to know like how many hours am I working on certain projects. And I even like put myself like my own projects as like a client and stuff. So I also,
that's good actually. I don't do that. A lot of people don't do that enough of like putting yourself as one of your own clients. I think that's actually really good.
Organization.
Back to organization, yeah. And that's the only way you're going to be able to juggle multiple projects.
And the last question for the process, like how to be seen as a viable candidate for a job in a medium, large companies, given the vast array of skills, listed requirements.
I think it's funny. Can you build LED panels? I'm like, who builds LED panels?
Yeah.
Like,
and I was kind of talking to you about this question earlier. Was like, I see job postings, like even Elmer's and I before, like see job postings, and they're like, you need to do this and know how to code this and like have 10 years experience with this and like blah blah blah, and like get paid like $60K or something.
Year,
and then it's like at the end of the day, like they're not gonna find someone that does all that.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this list too, I'm like, okay, even as long as I've been in this field, I don't have all these skills. Some of them, using projectors. I mean, recruiters or, just like agency managers, a lot of people that make these, they're kind of like making their dream person up, and they don't realize, So I guess to answer this question, how to be seen as a viable candidate, it's just confidence. I mean, just know what you know, be confident about what you do know, and also realize, like, if you look at a posting like that and you're like, okay, this doesn't really exist, understand they're not going to have anybody, there's not going to be a candidate that has that. So it's still definitely worthwhile in putting in your application and saying what you do know.
And then I guess the last, like, location. Is relocation a necessity, and can you do this remote? So I guess, like, because you do more live stuff and I do more remote stuff, and actually, like, for a while back of my head, like, I lived in LA and I was like, I don't want to live in LA, so I wanted to, like, be as remote as possible. And then for all my jobs last year, even other than, like, Cadillac, I think all of my jobs were remote, and like all my jobs that are based in LA, I never seen them.
Yeah, I don't know how common that is. It's tough because like it's different for different cities. For New York, I would say, being there for a long time and then going away for 4.5 years. I definitely lost work because people didn't want to pay for like flights and hotels and all that kind of stuff because of the nature of my work.
Yeah, you do more live.
They want me on site for things, to kind of manage what's going on. So it, I think it kind of differs. Now I do more remote work since COVID, but part of that is just because things that people used to say, we don't want that to be remote, they didn't have a choice. And then once it became a new norm, now like there's a bit more that you can do remote. But I don't want to discount the fact that like if you live in New York City or Los Angeles or something like that, there is more available.
Yeah, and then like after moving to New York, I did had jobs. So it's like, it's actually in DC, but they couldn't find anyone in DC. But it's like cheaper to have me train to DC than like flying someone out to LA. Yeah. And I got that job because of that. So
yeah, I guess it's that question really differs based on what your skill set is. If you're someone that can just log into a machine and fix a bunch of bugs and or
Yeah,
something
like
that,
if you're like a
different.
strong programmer,
Yeah.
like maybe you can do more remote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you, and also like on the derivative page, there is a part where you can like put your email and like where you're located, what's your skill set and everything. So they have a record of that. So then like, because there's always people reaching out to derivatives like, hey, we need like someone, a developer and stuff. And then they can look through their directory and like recommend through that. So I'll try to link that in the caption below. And also like other resources, like the HQ also has a job board, derivative also has a job board, and the HQ job board like updates every week and stuff, and that's something they can like comb through over time.
Yeah, and I guess at the core of the question, is relocation a necessity? No. And even for me, even though my jobs tend to want me there on site, on that job, I also have 2 or 3 other people working remote to help me. So working remote is completely viable. And no, you don't have to move across the world or move to some other city and pay 5 times as much rent. You don't have to. There's just like a networking component to like living in a city where a lot is going on and you're just going out to art shows and meeting people and all that. That is a benefit, but it's not a necessity for sure.
Yeah. How to start building a TD network if I'm in a new country. And I guess I sometimes travel and just like go, like I really like this place. I'll just look up what immersive agencies exist there. And then I was like, oh, hey, this is me. I do these tutorials and like, I just really want to know the community here. And like, would you like just let me know what you guys do, or like I just want to learn how is the process here and stuff. Like, would you want to like get coffee, or I can like visit, and then maybe they won't respond, and that's okay. But like I had people respond, and that's like also just building a network. And then before I also like, oh, maybe I want to live here, and I was like do some research like what exists over there, and like do they like, oh, they don't really do projections, but they have like more VR stuff, or like, oh, somehow they're like really big on AR, and like kind of doing like a little background research over there, and like, can you move over there, and like how, or can you meet someone from there and like learn more?
In addition to what you're talking about asking people about stuff, like set up a thing, like, oh, I'm just gonna go get a projector and project on the side of this building, you know, and kind of just see kind of who shows up. And I mean, I would think the internet would be your number one tool.
Yeah, and also like look on Instagram where what things are there, what is there any like art festivals there, and like, or any art festivals around there too. And I guess also the next question, it kind of also leads through, and then what is the opportunity in Europe and how can I find them? So we both base in the States. I work with
a lot of people in here. Yeah, and actually I do a lot of jobs in the US with European teams. Barcelona, Oslo, Berlin is strong. You know, London, so there's
London.
I would say you just gotta sit and just dig on the internet and like
like maybe if you're like Europe is also from abroad, like where do you want to work in Europe and stuff, like
there's even like a scene in Poland. There's like a really strong like animation, you know, sci-fi scene in Poland. But like, what are opportunities in Europe? How can I find them? I mean, the only way to answer that I'd say is like you said, like job board stuff, reach out to Derivative. Derivative is very helpful, actually. If you just ask them, IHQ.
Yeah, I guess those are all the questions. Do you have any like things that you want to like, there weren't questions on, but you think that is wanted to give advice to the viewers out here?
I don't know. I mean, if I were to kind of summarize being a freelancer, if all this is kind of on the premise of freelance Q&A, I would say, you know, you need to be comfortable not knowing where your next job is coming from.
Totally.
So like choosing to be a freelancer is choosing to have a certain lack of stability.
Another tip I got from someone who's just self-employed, not really in this industry, but it's good to have multiple streams of income that's like not all in like one basket. Like, oh, you not do all XR if like there's no film, or like, oh, I do workshops teaching and also commercial work. So like, okay, I can't like, there's no commercial work now. Like, let me try to do like a workshop or something. Or like, maybe you like have a 3D printer. Like maybe you can like make products that you can sell. We'll end up on that note, and I'll put more information on Brandon's website and his handle in the caption below, and I'll put mine also in the caption below. And if you have any additional questions, you can put in the comments, and see you next time. Bye!
Good luck.
Hey folks, thanks for watching. If you like our YouTube content, I highly recommend you check out the Interactive and Immersive HQ Pro. The HQ Pro is the only comprehensive educational resource and community for immersive design, TouchDesigner, and creative tech pros. In the HQ Pro trainings, we cover almost any topic you can think of, and we go way more in depth than we do in our YouTube tutorials. We have a private group where Matthew Reagan, myself, and our other industry veteran and pioneer teachers answer your questions every single day. If that sounds cool, click the link in the description to learn more. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more free TouchDesigner and immersive content.